Hi, welcome back to Mr. Stewart's lesson. Sorry I've been gone so long, but we have an exciting new feature today, which is a subscriber question. The subscriber is Rhys Barrett from Cardiff. And what Rhys is trying to do is he's trying to make a program that's going to draw bingo numbers. And what we want to do here is we want to draw a bingo number. The bingo number is going to appear right here, and then we're going to have a bingo lottery board in the middle here. So when I draw the number, that number is going to be placed on the lottery board. So say there might be 90 numbers, for example. So we want to be able to draw each number 1 through 90 one time and place that number on the lottery board, like 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 90. And then of course we want to stop because the bag would be empty. We'd have drawn all 90 numbers. So what we're going to do first, we're going to make a world. My screen's a little, you'll notice my video's a little bit bigger, my screen's a little bit bigger because I need a little bit more room. So I'm going to create a new subclass, a new world here called bingo. And I'm going to make that world a little bit bigger. I'm going to make it, so you notice the super, that's how big it is. Normally it's 600 by 400. I'm going to make it 800 by 600 instead. 800 wide, 600 high. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Now what I want to do first, I'm not going to give it a background image. It's just going to be a white background. You can always pretty it up later, but we're not going to worry about that right now. What I want to do first is I'm going to create the number that I'm actually going to draw. And so I'm going to make a new subclass, and I'm going to call it number. This is the number, and what's going to happen is it's going to be a square where I click and a random number is going to pop up. Okay? And so, and what's going to happen? So I'm going to start this up. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to import a couple things. I'm going to be writing here, so I need to import the java.awt.color. Right, this we've used this a lot before. This is just so that it knows the common colors: black, white, yellow, green. We're only going to use black and white though, so that's all we really need to worry about. And then I'm going to import something new, java.awt.font. Font is useful. It's just the kind of letters we're going to have. I want to be able to pick the kind of letters I'm actually going to have here. So what this is going to do is just pick a number. When you click on it, and I'm going to put the author and the version, which will just make the date. 5/15/2004. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a public class for this. I'm going to create a constructor for this class. So I'm going to say, oh no, first I'm going to create some variables. The first one is going to be max number. That's going to be the highest number I can draw, right? So it could be 50, 80, 90, something like that, but I'm not going to declare it yet. I'm going to declare the height equals 101. That's how high the image is, and int width also equals 101. So we're going to have this image is going to be a square 101 pixels by 101 pixels. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the constructor. So the constructor is something that runs automatically when the image gets created, and it's always a constructor always has the same name as whatever the class is. And I don't need to say void. Because it's a constructor, so it wouldn't return anything. It's not, so I don't need to declare void. This is the one time that you're not going to declare return thing after public or private. And inside this, I'm going to say int in. So what's going to happen when this thing's created, we're going to have to tell it what the max number is. Okay? So and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say max number equals n, and then I'm going to say, and that's all I'm going to do so far, because I have to create another method down here before I do anything. So what's going to happen, right, I'm going to have to create a method that's going to, basically what we want this thing to do, we're just going to make a square, and it's going to have a number in it. So when I click on it, first it's just going to say click here, then when I click on it, the random number is going to appear inside the square. So we're going to have to draw some rectangles and squares. So I'm going to make a method that's entirely for just drawing the squares and the numbers and everything. So I'm going to make a method called update, public void update. And when we update it, we want to tell it what number it is. But we're not going to get it as a string. We're not going to get it as a number. We're going to get it as a string. Because sometimes we're going to say words instead of numbers, like click here. And anyways, it's when it prints this out, it's going to need the whole thing in a string anyway. So first it's going to be string number string. So this is the whatever number we wanted to say, but we're going to make it a string. And then I'm going to say int font size, which is just how big the letters are going to be, right? So it's basically the number of pixels high the letters are going to be. Okay? So we've done this something similar before. If you've been following along and you saw we're using some things we've done before, if you saw the health bar and the game over screen and such, we're going to draw in here, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. So I'm going to start in a similar way. I'm going to say set image new Greenfoot image, and so we already declared the height and the width. Height, comma, width. Okay, so the height is 101 and the width is 101. And then I'm going to say, I have to get the image, so I'm going to use the get image, Greenfoot image, my image equals get image. This should all be familiar so far if you've followed some of my other lessons before where I've done things with the image. My image, set color, dot black. So I'm gonna draw this everything in black right now because we're boring. Then I'm going to draw a rectangle around this. You've seen me do before. My image dot draw rect, and we're doing something similar here to what we did with the health bar. The rectangle has to be one smaller than the size of the image, or it's going to go off the image. So the first two we have 4 coordinates. The first 2 coordinates is the x and y, where the rectangle starts at, which is the upper left hand corner, which is 0, 0. Then we want to go to the lower right hand corner, 1 pixel short. So I'm going to say height. So I'm going to say so we have so it's x and y. So I'm going to say width minus 1, comma, height minus 1. That's the lower right hand corner. So this is going to just draw a rectangle. Okay, and then what we're going to want to do, I don't really have to do this, but I want to declare the font. This is a new thing we've never done before. I'm going to say font, and this only works if you've imported java.awt.font, or it won't know what font is. F equals new font, and the font here is going to be, I'll pick Courier, but you could pick Times New Roman or something like that. That's just the kind of letters we're drawing. Font plain, that means we're not making it italic or bold or anything fancy like that. And then I'm going to say font size. You can play around with this. Either you can say font.italic or font.bold, things like that. If you want to play around with it, later you can do that yourself. And so this is and the font size, right? We got passed to us, right? We want it when it's numbers, we want to say it really big. When it's letters, we're going to say it smaller. That's why we did this. And now I'm going to say my image dot draw. This is something new. String. So we're going to draw. Drawing a string means drawing. It's not a straight line. It means drawing some words or letters or something on here. So I'm going to say draw string and number string, which was passed to us, 7,72, and that's just the X and Y of where it's going to appear. You can play it where you may wonder, why'd you pick 772? The answer is, honestly, I just played around with it until the numbers looked like they were in about the right place. But you know, it's not that you can play around with it yourself. So I'm gonna see. I'll just show you what that looks like so far. I'm gonna compile it. Oops, I made a mistake. I put a parentheses here when I should not have. Sorry about that. I'm going to put this in here. So if I say new number, right, it's going to ask me a number, right, 90, right? And then it's going to, there's just a green foot because I haven't done anything. Now I'm going to do update. So I'll say a number string 55, and I'll say font size 72, which is how big I want it to be. And oops, sorry, number string, it has to be a quote, right? So I'm going to put it in quotes because it actually has to be a string. And you'll see there's my number. Okay. And I just noticed my number wasn't big enough because although I created the font, I forgot to set the font. So I'm going to say my image. And one of the methods you have here is set font F, and F is my font. I created the font F, so I need to set the font F. So now the number will be big enough. So just to show you, here's my number, 75. It doesn't really matter at this point what number I pick here, and I'm going to pick update. I'm going to say 55 maybe, and I'll pick font size 72, and that's what it's supposed to look like. And it doesn't have to actually be number. I can say click here, and I can make that font size 12, and that'll also sorry, I have to put it in quotes. And there you go. So, okay, now what we want to do now is we want to make it, when it first starts, we want it to say click here in font size 12. And so I'm going to up here, I'm going to say update. Then in quotes I'm going to say click here. And that's the string, the number string, although it's not a number in this case. And then I'm going to say 12, which is the size of the font. That's what it's going to say when it's first created. And then down here in the act method, what I want to do is, first I want it to only happen if I click on it. So if, and so the way in Greenfoot to make something work when you click on it is I say if Greenfoot mouse click this, okay, and so that's saying if this just means that if I click on this with my mouse, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to pick a number. So I'm going to say, oh, first I need to make I'm going to have to pick a number. So before I do anything else, I have to make a method called pick number. So I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to go down here, which is something I should have done already, and create a method called pick number. Public int pick number. And right now all it's going to do is just pick a random number from 1 to my max number, right? My max number up here is whatever I was told that I was, the maximum number I was going to create. So I'll say int number equals Greenfoot. We've done this before. Get random number. And I'm going to say max number +1. The +1 comes because if I say get random number 10, it's going to pick a number from 0 to 9. So we have to add 1 to it. And then I'm going to say string. I'm going to create a number string variable. Because you remember down here when I created this update variable, it's going to I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to do that now. I'm going to do that up here. I'm going to return the number. I'm going to say return number. Sorry, I got mixed up with which method I was working on. So I'm going to return that number. So all this is going to do is just give me a random number and then return it. Return just gives back, right? So when I run the pick number method, it's just going to give me a random number here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say in my act method, I'm going to say int this number, which is the number I'm picking right now, equals pick number. Then I'm going to say string number string equals string. And what we need to do is, we just got a number, it's an integer, but now I need to turn it into a string. So there's various ways to do it. There's actually like a bunch of different ways to turn a number into a string, but the method I'm using is this. String is an object. By just saying string, it's an object, and it has a bunch of different methods. One of the methods in string is something called value of, and you see it says value of int, see that? And that's, so it's going to take, it says give me an integer and take the value of it and make it into just a string. So I'm going to take this number and turn it into a string, right? So, and just to understand what it means, you may be confused when I say what's the difference between a number and a string, right? And to you and me, if I see 12 as a string or 12 as a number, it looks exactly the same. I don't know the difference. It looks exactly the same to me. But to a computer, it makes a huge difference whether a number is a string, because then you can do all the string things to it, like print it like a string, right? Whereas if it's a number, then you can add it and subtract it, right? So to a computer, we have to, right, a string is words and letters, right? And a computer sees 12 as a string different and 12 as an integer, for example. And that's why we're doing this. So I'm going to take string number string equals string dot value of this number, turning it into a string, and then I'm going to say update number string. And we're going to make it big, 72 size font. Okay? So now we have this thing. This should work right now, unless I make a typo, which I did. Forgot a parentheses there. Now, if I put this number in here, what's going to happen? I'll create new, right? This of course is the max size it's going to be, right? We're going to make a max size of 90, right? So let's imagine this, right? Here it says click here. I click on it. Oh, I have to run it before I can click on it. I click on it and I get numbers. Yay, I'm drawing random numbers here, right? So now comes the hard part, which is to put it on the lottery board. First of all, but before we do that, let's actually put it in the world. Let's make it part of the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say number in equals new number. creating it as an object so I can add it to the world. But of course, we actually have to give it a size, right? And so I'm gonna say I have to say size. Yeah, I'll just say 90. Okay, and then down here I'll say add object. In is my variable, and let's give it coordinates 100, 100, which is going to put it in the upper left-hand corner. So here we go, right? And so now we have to create a lottery board, and this is going to be a little bit more complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new subclass called lotto board. Okay, so I'm going to open up the lotto board code window, and so we're going to make some variables here. The lotto board's going to be a little complicated, so I'm going to say int lotto board columns, and then I'm going to make another one called int lotto board rows, which is how many rows and columns it's going to have. This is the one we're going to make is going to have 9 by 10. I'm going to say int column width, int row height, which is how big each column in each row is going to be. I'll just make the image right here so I can declare it. I'm going to declare a couple of fonts. I'm going to say font big font equals new font courier and then I'm going to make another one, a little font. Because sometimes we're going to have to make things a little smaller. And while I'm doing this, let's remember to import the things we need to do when we're going to draw. We're going to import java.awt.color, and I'll import java.awt.font. Now we're going to do something a little bit more advanced. We're going to create an array variable. An array variable is something that has a lot of different values in the same variable. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to make a value for each column and row. But I'm just going to make it a single. I'm not going to make it a two-dimensional array. I'm just going to make it a single-dimensional array. So basically there's going to be 90 squares in this because we're going to make it 9 by 10. So I want to make 90 different true or false variables. And basically what's happened is it's going to be true if the thing is picked and false if it hasn't. So I'm going to say Boolean. Now this here, you see these two square brackets, this is what's making it an array variable. We're making it an array variable here, okay? Now I need to go down here and I'm going to make a constructor. Again, another constructor which we've made before, okay? So I'll say public lotto board means again we're making it as a constructor. We don't have to say anything about the return because it's a constructor. It has to have the same name as the class lotto board. Okay. and we're going to get a couple things. We want to be told here when we create it how many columns it has. So I'm going to say int columns, int rows. So this is going to expect when it's created to be told how many rows and how many columns it's going to have. So now we're going to declare a couple things. So up here I said the lotto board columns variable. This is going to be equal to the columns argument, which we're passed. Then we have the lotto board rows. It's going to be equal to the rows argument, which we got. We're going to set the image, and it's going to be a new, and we're going to make it 401 by 401 pixels. Okay, so we're just creating a new Greenfoot image that's for an empty image here, 401 by 401 pixels. We're going to get the image and call it my image. We already created the my image variable up here, the Greenfoot image my image. So I'm going to say my image equals get image. This is going to get the image so I can do things to it. And I'm going to set some colors. So I'm going to say my image dot set color. Then we're going to draw a rectangle around the whole thing. So I'm going to say my, can't hit that cap lock key. Again, we're going to use the draw rect feature. It's going to be 0, 0, my image so I'm just going to get the width of my image. It's going to be, there's going to be 0, 0. Once again, this part is the upper left hand corner. The lower right hand corner, the X is going to be get width -1. It has to be 1 less, so it'll stay on the image. And then okay, so this is just drawing the rectangle around here. So I'm going to set the font to the big font here, and which the big font I created right up here. See, I don't remember why I created that little font. Maybe we'll never use it, but it's not going to hurt anything by being there. Now, what I want to do is I need to set the width of the columns. So I'm getting past a certain number of columns and a certain number of rows. So for example, if I have 10 columns high, if I have 10 columns wide and my image is 400 pixels wide, I need to be about 40 pixels per column. So we're going to divide. We're going to do a little division here. So I'm going to say column width equals my image get width divided by, so basically this is going to be 400, this is going to be 10, which is what we're going to pass. There's going to be 10 columns, so each of these is going to be 40, right? And row height is the same thing. It's going to be the height of the image divided by the number of rows. Now we're going to do some things with our array variable. So first thing I have to do is say how big my array is. When I create an array in Java, you have to declare how big it is. That is, how many variables are in it. And the number of columns and rows is going to be just my the number of columns times the number of, the total number of squares is going to be the number of columns times the number of rows. Simple arithmetic. So if it's going to be 10 columns wide, 9 rows high, so it's going to be 90. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say lotto numbers picked equals new Boolean, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to do square brackets in here. Now inside these square brackets, this is saying how big the thing is normally going to be. So I could put a number like 90, but what I want to do, I want this to be able to change, right? I want to be able to say, if I want to say, oh, I want to make, instead of a 90 by 100 board, a 9 by 10 board, I want to make a 5 by 7 board or something like that, right? I want it to be able to do that, right? So I'm going to say new Boolean, and it's going to say lotto board columns, which I'm going to copy to avoid having to type so much, times lotto board rows, oops, didn't mean to paste there, I meant to copy, plus 1. And the plus 1 is just going to say, because it's going to go 1 higher than it would have been before. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is so now we've created this array. So now we have this one variable that's got 100 different things in it, 100 different true or false statements. Right now they don't have any value yet because we haven't declared them. So what we have to do is, none of the numbers have been picked yet, so we're going to have to go through each number in the array and say it hasn't been picked. So basically we're saying 1 is false, 2 is false, 3 is false, 4 is false, 5 is false, 6 is false, up to 100, right? So we're going to, and so what we need to do is use a for loop. All right, for loop means it's just, it goes through, it does for 1, for 2, for 3, for 4, for 5, for 6. Very useful when we're working with arrays. So I'm going to say for, and then in parentheses, this is the format of an for loop. We'll say int I equals 1. This is where we start counting. Sorry, that should be I equals 1. I is just normally the variable we use. So we start counting at 1. We say I is less than lotto numbers picked dot length. Okay, so we're basically so lotto numbers picked dot length. This dot length, when we have an array, the dot length says how long, is a thing that just tells me how long. It's something I can add that says how long it is. So if there's 90 things, then lotto numbers pick dot length is, so we're saying we're going to count until I gets up to however many things there are in this array. And then I'll say I plus plus. That just means we're going to add 1 every time we go through with the array, which is normally you could do. You could add 5 every time, but with the for loop, you almost always add 1 every time. So this is how most for loops look, something like this. And I'm going to say all I want to do is declare that whatever thing I'm on is false. So I'm going to say lotto numbers picked I. So this means number. This means the I number, whatever one I'm on. So if I'm on 15, it'll say 15. Lotto numbers picked 15 equals false, which is just saying that it hasn't been picked yet. Because we want to go through and want to say none of them have been picked yet. That's the whole point of why we're doing this, right? So now we've created them. So what we have now with this part is we have this variable with 20 things, with 90 or however many things in it, right? And the first one is false, the second one is false, the third one is false, the fourth one is false. If you do a lot of programming, you might be saying, why don't you start at 0? Because programmers usually start their counting at 0. And normally we do, except that the whole point of this is we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is no 0 in this, so we're actually starting counting at 1. Now, what I need to do is I need to go and actually draw the columns and the rows, draw in all the squares where the numbers are going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do another for loop, and this time I'm going to go through the columns. So I'm going to say for, and again I'll start int I equals 1, I less than lotto board columns. So we're going to count up to the number of columns we have. I plus plus. And we're going to say int line x. So this is going to be wherever the thing is going to be drawn. I times. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my image, draw a line, line x. So we're going to draw a line. So say we're on column 3, right? And the columns are 40 pixels high, right? So we're going to start, we're going to use the draw line method, which draw line just means draw line from an x and y to an x and y. So the line x in this case is going to be, say the column width is 40 times, say we're on number 3, so it'll start at 120, right? 0, which is going to be the left side of the square, right? Okay. And I'm sorry, the top of the square. Sorry, we're starting from the top of the square, not from the left side of the square, because we're doing columns here. So 0 is the top of the square. Then we're going down to the line x, which would be 120 in this case, y. And then we're going to say my image get height, which is basically we're drawing down to the bottom of the square. Okay, and this is going to draw the line, one line for each column I have in here, right? And then I'm going to copy this because I'm going to just make a few changes here, right? We're going to change this for int I equals 1, I is less than lotto board rows, and then this is going to be the line y, which is the y coordinate of where the line starts, is going to be I, whatever number we're on, times the row height. And then we're going to make, this is going to be a little bit different. We're going to start at x equals 0 and y equals line y, right? So say we're on row 2, line y would be, and the row height is 40, right? So line 2 would be, line y would be 80. And then I'm going to say my image get width, which is the x coordinate, which is all the way over on the right. So if our image is, so my image dot get width in this case would be 401 because that's the width of our image. And then I'm going to say line y. And this is going to draw my boxes here, all my boxes here. And this is going to create my thing. And so let me just make sure I didn't make any typos here by compiling it. Okay, so let's watch what happens. I'm going to create a new lotto board. I'm going to put it in there. It's going to say how many columns. So we're going to have 10 columns and 9 rows. And there we go. Here's our image. And this is our squares, and we're going to have the numbers appear in the squares. And we're really getting somewhere here. And now what we have to do, we have our numbers. We just have to make the numbers appear in the squares, which is actually going to be a little bit harder than it sounds. So now what we're going to do, we're going to make a method that's going to place the number in the right place on the lotto board. So I'm going to make a method I'm going to make a method, and I'm going to call it place number. And what this is going to do is it's going to put the number in the right place. So it needs to know what number it's going to get. So we're going to create an argument, int num. I'll just say call it num. This is the argument, the number we're going to place. And so what I'm going to do, now I want to set my font to the smaller font. I knew I created that for a reason, so I'm going to say my image set font small font. Actually, now I don't know why I created the big one. Oh well. So I'm going to set this font to the small font, and then I'm going to say string num string, because we're going to be writing, right? Once again, a string, right, is something that we can letters and words, things that we can write. So we're getting an integer, a number, and we need to put it in a string so that we can write it out. So I'm going to say string num string equals string value of num. So we're going to get the number, and we're going to make it into a string. And I'm going to say, and then what I need to do, I need to say that it's been picked. Now this number's been picked, so I'm going to say, going to use my lotto numbers picked array, right? So whatever number that is, we're going to say equals true, which is going to make it so that it knows that that number has been picked, right? Now, the tricky part is I need to know what row and what column I want to be on. So let's start with the row. So we're going to find I'm going to say num row, which is the row of whatever number we're on. Okay. Now first I'm going to put int in parentheses. That just makes, actually I probably don't even need to do this, but that just makes sure that we're going to be dividing, and we might come out with a decimal. We probably will. We want to make sure it comes out as an integer. This actually probably isn't necessary, but I'm going to do it anyway. So what I want to do, I'm going to say num minus 1 divided by, so the best way to describe this is just to imagine, right? Say I get 37, right? So what's going to happen is if I do 37 divided, and there's 10 columns, I divide it by 10, I'll be in row 3, right? If I get 47 and I divide by 10, I'll be in row 4. You might be saying, but why the minus 1? What's that for? Well, the thing is, and I'm going to want, right, the thing that I have to remember is if I get 10, it's going to be here. If I get 20, it's going to be here. If I get 30, it's going to be here, right? So if I get 20, I want to do, if I do 20 divided by, right, and then what's going to happen is that's going to put it down over here in the next row, which is not what we want. So we're saying the number minus 1. So if I get 20, I would do 19 divided by 10, which would put me still in column 1. So there's my row. Okay. Now we're going to find the column. So I'm going to say int num column equals, and I'm going to say num minus 1 percent. Now the percent sign, it's not really a percent, it's this is called modular division. So what we're doing, say we get 37 and we're dividing it by the number of columns, right? There's 10 columns, right? So 37 divided by 10, this gives us the remainder. This percent, it drops whatever the answer of the division and gives us the remainder. So if I had 37, then what I would get would be 7. Actually, I would get 6, right? Because we did number minus 1. If I had 28, 28% 10 would be 8, right? If I had 46% sign 10, right, that would give me 6, right? So that's what this percent does. So this basically what this is doing is, if we have 10 columns, this is going to give me the ones digit. It's going to return the ones digit to us, right? And drop the tens digit. And now I'll say, and so now we need to know exactly where it goes, the x coordinate and the y coordinate. So I'm going to say int num x equals num column times right. So the number of the column. So so we're talking about how wide we are, right? So say we're in column 3, right? So we have a column width 40 in this case. So we want to be at x equals 120. As for the +2, that's just a fudge factor I had added in there to sort of align it in the center. The +2 just scoots it over a little bit and makes it a little bit more in the center of the column. And then I'm going to say int num y. So we're getting the y coordinates, which is the same thing. We're doing the row number times the row height. And then I'm going to say plus row height divided by 2 plus 10. So this part here, the way text works, right? It's the baseline. The baseline is sort of in the middle. So we want to add half the row height, which would be about 20, and a little bit more, which is 30, which is going to put it right in the middle, into sort of in the middle of the column, right? And last of all, I'm going to add the string. My image.draw string num string, which we created up here, num x, which is the x coordinate, which we created right here, and num y, which is the y coordinate. And where's my small font that I created up here? Oh, small font. I call it little font, not small font. And lotto numbers picked, I spelled wrong. Whoops. Finding a lot of mistakes here. And column width is lowercase c. Sorry, lots of typos there. Now, if I look in here and I put my lotto board in here, right, with 10 columns, 9 rows, and if I want to place a number, right, so I'll say place number, let's say 35, and there it goes right here. Place number 11 goes right over here. Place number 90 goes down here, right? So it's going to place my numbers on here. Hopefully you're going to see, right? So now we're getting somewhere, right? Because all we have to do is make this, call this, and place our number on there. It's getting really, it's getting a lot easier, right? So now I've created my lotto board. I've created my, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my lotto board, I'm actually going to put it in the world, right? First thing I'm going to do, the world should know how many columns and rows we're going to have. So I'm going to say columns, int columns equals 10, int rows equals 9, and we're going to pass this, it's 9 times 10, so we're going to pass it. But in this case, I'm going to say, I'm going to actually base my 90 off columns times rows. Everything I'm doing here is trying to make it so that when I change this program, I should change as few as few numbers as possible, right? So when this is all set up, if I want to on the fly say, oh, I want to have 8 columns and 9 rows and 12 rows, I can just do it just like that, right? So I'm going to say columns times rows. That's when I pass the number. And then down here, I'm going to say lotto board LB equals new So I'm passing the columns and rows as arguments to the lotto board, right? Which it's expecting to see those columns and rows, right? And now I'm going to say add object LB. So this is the lotto board. We're going to say 400 to 50. X of 400, y of 250. Okay. And so now if I compile this, my lotto board's going to be on here, ready to go. So now what we need to do is we need to have the number actor call the place number method on the lotto board so it can place whatever number it comes up with. So if you want one actor to place another actor, to call up another actor, one way to do it is to have the world return that actor with a method. So I'm going to call up my bingo world, and you notice we have this LB, that's the name of the lotto board actor that we've created. So I'm going to make a method called, I'm going to say public lotto board get lotto board, public lotto board get lotto board, and so this is the name of the method. This here, the lotto board, is what it's going to return. It's going to return a lotto board so that we can call the methods on it. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say return LB. LB is the lotto board. It's going to return this lotto board variable so we can do stuff with it. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the number actor and this method where it gets the number, right? We need to call it up. We need to call up that this thing is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say what I need to do is I need to get the world. I need to get the bingo world. And it's not enough for it to just be a world. It has to be the bingo world. So we're going to have to type the variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say bingo. This is the type of, we're going to create a variable called bingo of the type bingo. Right, so this first bingo is saying what type of variable it is. The second is the name of the variable, equals. And then in parentheses, I'm going to say bingo. And then I'll say get world. So this is going to get the world. This here will get the world. It'll turn it into the specific world type bingo, and then it's going to assign it to the bingo variable. And then I'm going to get the lotto board. So now I have the world, so I can get the lotto board from it. So I'm going to create a variable of the lotto board type called lotto board. And if I say bingo, and if I press right, I press Control Space, you'll see that I have all the methods of this world. And this one in particular that we want is the get lotto board. So we've created now a lotto board variable, so now we can do anything that the lotto board can do. And so I'm going to say, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the number. And if I, oops, not capital, I made it all lowercase, so I'll do it this way. If I do Control Space, you'll see here's my place number, and we're going to place the number that we've created. So we're going to take the number we created, which is this number. We're actually not going to pass the string because the method's actually looking for a number, not a string. So we're passing the number itself. If you look here in the place number feature over in lotto board, you'll see it looks for a number, not a string. So we're passing the number. This can be a little bit confusing, mixing up the numbers and the strings. And so that's going to place the number on there. And let's compile it and let's run it. And you'll see now when we click, looks like we're almost done, and we've basically almost working. There is one little problem, which is actually fairly significant though, which is that there's nothing. You notice we got like 61 here, right? So if 61 here comes again, it's just going to place the 61 again. We want to make sure that we don't draw the same number twice, and we also want, if the bat, you'll notice we got 25 again, even though we had already drawn 25. So what we need to do is we need to actually make sure, and here we have 19, right? We're drawing numbers that we had already drawn before, which we don't want to be able to do. So what I'm going to do is I want to be able to check from the lotto board to see if a number's already been picked, right? So I'm going to make a Boolean variable, a Boolean method. A method's going to return a true or false. Is number picked? And this is actually a really easy thing to do, because the number that we have, we've already, these numbers, these variables, right? It's a Boolean, true or false, and you'll notice that when a number gets picked, it's true, right? So what we're going to do is I'm just going to say return, and we're going to return lotto numbers picked. Oh, and we have to get the number of whatever number we're looking for. So now what this is going to do, if I do this here, it's going to return and tell me whether the number's been picked or not. Let me just show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to compile it again, and I'll run. Okay, so we got 45 here. So I'll pause it, and I'm going to check here. I want to see, is 45 picked? And it returns true, whereas if I say is 44 picked, for example, it'll say false, right? So it's telling me whether the number's been picked or not, right? So what I want now, the number, right, this needs to only pick a number that hasn't been picked yet, right? So what we're going to do, I'm going to change the number class a little bit. I'm going to actually move these three parts up where I get the lotto board. I'm just going to cut them here. I'm going to move them up before I pick the number, because we need to use the is number picked method on the lotto board to see if it's been picked. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to and then I'm going to do something else. I'm going to say, I'm going to see where it says this number equals picked number. This is where I declare the variable, and this is where this is where I create the variable, and this is where I declare what it is. I'm actually going to separate these two things. So I'm going to say int this number by itself, which just creates the variable, and then I'm going to say this number equals pick number. I'm going to make it two separate things, and where I'm going to show you why in just a sec. So what I want to do is I want to basically keep looking for a number as long as I need a number that hasn't been used, right? So I'm going to make a Boolean variable. I'm going to say Boolean need unused number, because at this point we need an unused number. We don't have one yet, and it'll be true, which is true. We need to get a number that hasn't been used yet. Now I'm going to use a new kind of loop. I don't think I've used this before, called a while loop. And a while loop means keep doing something while something's true. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep drawing numbers while we don't have a number that hasn't been used yet. So I'm going to say while, and in parentheses, and it's just like an if loop. Imagine like an if statement, except it keeps running as long as it's true, right? And I'll say while need unused number. I'm going to do open curly brackets, and then I'm going to do close curly brackets down here. So this just picks the numbers, right? This just picks the numbers. okay? And then what I'm going to do, so basically once we've got a number that hasn't been picked yet, then we don't need an unused number anymore. So I'm going to say need unused number equals, and then I'll say lotto board, and then I'm going to get is number picked, right? And I'm going to say this number which we just created. Okay, so what I'm doing every time, so what happened is I'm going to pick a number, say I pick 37, then it's going to say, okay, is 37 picked? If it's not, if it's false, then we don't need an unused number anymore and we can move on. If 37 has been picked, then it's going to go back and pick another number. So it's going to keep looking, right? And actually, so it doesn't get confused, up where I declare the variable, I'm just saying this number equals 0. Just so that it does have some value before I start picking numbers, but it will get a value. So this is what's going to happen right now. So it's going to keep looking for a number until it gets one that hasn't been picked. And then, oh, this place number, I don't want to place the number until it's been picked. I made a mistake. I shouldn't move this up here. So this shouldn't be up here. So I'm going to cut it. And this should happen after we've picked a number. The place number should happen after we've picked a number that hasn't been picked yet. So just to take you through, because I move things along, first we get the bingo world, then we get the lotto board, so we can do the lotto board stuff on the lotto board. Then I create the number variable, whatever we're going to draw, which just starts out at 0. It's nothing yet. Then I'm going to say I'm going to need an unused number, right? And then I'm going to look and I'm going to say, I'm going to, as long as I need an unused number, I'm going to pick numbers until I get one that hasn't been used yet. And then I'm going to place the number, and then I'm going to update it on my screen. So let me show you what that's going to look like when I do it now. It's going to actually look about the same as what we did before, except that what's going to happen is I'm not going to get any numbers yet. And now it really seems like we must be done, but there's one little problem left, which is actually kind of annoying. Because what's going to happen when I pick every single one of these numbers, right? When every single one of these numbers is picked, it's going to keep trying and trying and trying to find a number that hasn't been picked yet. But there won't be a number that hasn't been picked yet because they've all get picked. So we're going to have an endless loop, which is always a danger when you're dealing with a while loop. We don't want an endless loop, right? And so we're so close to being done, but we just need to deal with this problem of getting a potential. But please do not, if you're doing this, don't keep doing it till all the numbers are picked, or you're going to get an endless loop and everything's going to freeze up. And we certainly don't want that. That would be a catastrophe. So here's how we prevent an endless loop. Because what's going to happen is, so what I'm going to do in here, basically what's going to happen is, you know, say for example, say I'm like almost at the end, right? And I like tried like 10 or 15 times, right, to pick an unused number, and they've all been used. Well, at that point, I'm going to want to say, maybe all the numbers have been picked yet. Maybe I need to go through and see if all the numbers have been picked. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to say, right, after I've tried like, let's say 12 times, right? So I'm going to start a variable called int tries equals 0. And then in here, under pick number, I'm going to write tries plus plus. So this is going to add 1 every time I try to pick a number, right? Now, let's say I've picked, right? So I'm going to say if tries is greater than 12. So this means I've tried more than 12 times, and every number that I've tried has been picked. At this point, we might want to say, let's go through and see if all the numbers have been picked, right? At this point, we need to go through. So how can we go through and see if all the numbers have been picked? The way to do it is we need a for loop. We need to go through if every single number has been picked, then we just gonna have to stop and move on, right? We're gonna break the loop, basically. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a Boolean variable called numbers left. I'm going to start out here and I'm going to assume that that's false. That is, if I've tried 12 times, I'm going to assume to begin with that there's just no numbers left. But there might be, right? So we're going to have to go through and we're going to have to make a for loop. For int I equals 1, I less than or equal to the maximum number that we're looking at, which is max number, and then I'm going to say I plus plus. Okay, so we're going to go through and we're going to go through and see. We're going to go from 1 to whatever the highest number is, and we're going to check every single one. And if any one of them is not used yet, then we can say that there is a numbers left. So if, I'm going to say if lotto, if it's not, this exclamation point means it's not true. If it's not true that, for each number, if it's not true that if lotto board dot is number picked, and I'm going to say I here because that's the number we're on. If it's not true that lotto board is number picked for that one, then we're going to say then what, it must be true that there are numbers left. So if it's not true that there are numbers left, if there's no numbers left, this exclamation point means it's not true that there are numbers left. Number equals 0, and then we're going to say need unused number equals false, because we don't need an unused number anymore because there's nothing more to draw. And so now it's going to, if I do this and run it, it's going to keep putting on numbers. Let's see if we can get through. So we've got all the numbers left. And now all of a sudden just goes to 0. Nothing more will happen. And this is our lotto board. Now it works. It's going to keep drawing until there's nothing left to draw, and it's going to put them on the board. I was going to make a method that's actually going to tell you that the numbers are all picked, but this lesson has gone on long enough, and I believe I will leave that as an exercise to Rhys Barrett and his fellow students and all the rest of you subscribers out there. Thank you for coming to Mr. Stewart's lessons, and I would love to get more subscriber questions. So if you also have a Greenfoot programming problem and you need help with it, please give me a contact me through Google+ and let me know about it. And I can give you my email address. When you contact me, I'll give you my email address, and you can send me whatever information you need. See you soon at Mr. Stewart's Lessons.